What kind of doctor are you? I'm an oncologist. Oh, that must be so depressing. Sigh, how many times have I had this exchange? My reply is always the same. No, it's not depressing. It's actually very satisfying and also very exciting in many ways because so much progress has been made in the past few decades in the management of cancer. When I was a resident in internal medicine, I thought that I would specialize in infectious diseases, and indeed spent my military requirement in the public health service at the CDC. However, toward the end of my residency, I became interested in hematology, and when I spent an elective month at Fox Chase Cancer Center in Philadelphia with a few of the pioneers in the then new specialty of medical oncology, I was hooked. The opportunity to interact with people at their most vulnerable time, the opportunity to use my teaching skills to educate patients about where their situation fit into the big picture, and to then have the tools to perturb that big picture was priceless. For 40 years, I mainly focused on patients with lung cancer and breast cancer. The majority of the lung cancer patients eventually died of their illness, while the majority of the breast cancer patients did not. So I had two very different realms of experience. And over the course of 40 years, the outlook for lung cancer improved substantially, and patients were clearly living much longer with their illnesses, even if not cured. Similarly, amazing advances in breast cancer treatment meant that a larger majority of those patients survived and were cured. Many physicians shrink from serious conversations about prognosis. It takes time, it can be uncomfortable, but can also be very rewarding. And one learns ways to impart difficult information with kindness. We all develop our own scripts. For example, if a patient pushes for specific timelines about survival, if the physician answers the average is a year, the patient leaves and tells his family, the doctor says I have a year to live. But if the physician answers just as accurately, if I had 100 patients who have what you have, half would have died in a year. It's the same data, but it leaves open the real possibility that the patient will be one of the more fortunate ones. I never pushed specific timelines if I wasn't asked, but I always made sure that the goals of therapy, cure versus possible remission and prolongation of life, were clearly understood at the start. Some of the toughest conversations are when treatment needs to be stopped. The remaining treatment options are not likely to be helpful. The risks of spending one's last days in the ICU are high, and the likelihood that quality of life would be better served with palliative maneuvers only. That's where our skills are tested. But I always found those conversations to be the most satisfying. I might say, we might not have a lot of control over how much time you have left, but we do have control over how you spend that time. I'm worried that in your current weak condition, more treatment may well shorten your life rather than prolong it. And we learn never to say, there's nothing more we can do. There's always something we can do. We're going to be aggressive at getting this pain under control. We're going to be aggressive about getting you out of bed and moving around a little bit, and so on. I frequently marveled at how patients mustered their inner resources and with their families their external resources to make the remaining time better. What arrangements could they make at home to manage their new limitations? How might the adult children reorder their schedules a bit to accommodate new needs? And I was always amazed when adult children or siblings would take a leave from their jobs and family halfway across the country to come live with a parent in their final days. When I had patients who were home with hospice care, I would sometimes ask the family very timidly if I might make a house call to see if any additional medical input was needed. Needless to say, they were generally delighted to have me come by, and it was a privilege for me to see people in their natural habitat, the 95% of their lives that was unrelated to their final illness. I'll always remember one conversation I had with a woman with advanced lung cancer who was probably within a few months of the end. She was feeling pretty well at the time. She commented at one visit that she was going to get fitted for new dentures. I knew that she was someone of very limited means and commented, "New dentures are pretty expensive, aren't they?" "Yes," she said, "several $1,000s." After a deep breath, I felt compelled to tell her, "I'm worried that you're going to spend this large amount of money but won't have a long enough time to enjoy these dentures. Maybe you'd want to use the money for other things." She was so grateful for my candor, and I don't think was shocked in any way. One of the harder conversations surrounds deciding to forego further treatment because the person is too weak or frail to tolerate it. They're not yet ready to discuss a hospice referral because they're hoping that their condition will improve with a few weeks of rest. Maybe a little more time will allow for recovery from the lingering effects of the last treatment. But if I'm pretty sure that a few weeks off won't lead to a meaningful change, I'll point out that while they're in this weak state, they're missing out on services like hospice that can improve their situation at home and help their families care for them. I note that one can opt out from hospice if they really do rally and resume it later. I've even had patients kicked out of hospice because they rallied, but I feel compelled to state that moving to another round of chemo is likely to make them even weaker and risk landing them in the hospital with complications. Oddly enough, the easiest conversations are the ones with people who toss away all the euphemisms and want to know with as much precision as possible how much time they have left. And then, what will my death be like? Am I likely to have a lot of pain? And I'm happy to reassure them that death is very rarely accompanied by some cataclysmic, awful event that would be traumatic to witness. The vast majority of the time, it is quiet and calm, and the person just seems to drift off. Over the years, when a physician has done me or my family member a favor, like meet me in the ER to sew up my lacerated hand on a Saturday night, I might send a thank you note, but I usually stop short of saying, "Let me know if I can return the favor." No one wants the oncologist to return a favor. Since nobody gets off this earth alive, and none of us knows when we will die, though it probably won't be at age 127 like Sarah, it's important to have a realistic and supportive medical partner through this process. So no, it's not depressing. There's a great deal of satisfaction associated with helping people face potentially life-threatening illnesses, and when things don't go well, helping them to navigate toward a comfortable death. I feel like I've been given a gift to have a window into patients' lives at some of their most stressful times and to join them on their path to getting through it. Thank you.
I was a little worried we were going to do a ditto, and we did similar, but not quite ditto. At the end of the music Hamilton, George Washington sings his final salvo. "Let me tell you what I wish I'd known," lower, "when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control who lives, who dies, who tells your story." This is, I think, the Jewish response to dying. It's about the stories we leave. When we speak of someone who's passed, we refer to them as being of blessed memory. This is the undercurrent of our too short lives. All we leave behind are memories, and if we do this life mostly right, the memories are blessings. So I don't cure patients. My patients die, as a rule. I'm a neuro-oncology nurse practitioner. My patients have brain cancer. And Brian, hi babe, he says that my office is the happiest place on earth. In a very small, unironic way, I actually agree with him. I am one of the very few lucky people in this life who takes great joy and pleasure in my job. Before I can know what kind of treatment we should be offering, I need to know who the person in the room is. I need to have some sense of their stories, what makes them who they are in this world, and that guides me and my recommendations for their care. So Don is very young. He was 41, real person. When he's diagnosed with this most malignant form of brain cancer, he was a paramedic here in Chicago. And the first time I met him, Don is wearing a blue t-shirt. Y'all kind of know what I'm talking about, one of these Chicago Fire Department t-shirts with his ambulance rig number on the back of his shirt. Don is pretty calm. He's not panicked, but his wife has that sort of feral look of someone who knows that this is the inflection point. This is the day that their lives are going to change. Over the next few months, Don gets a lot of chemo, really good standard of care, and when that doesn't work, we do some clinical trials. And that meant we spent a lot of time together. I learned that Don's favorite thing in the whole world was taking their 3 kids to Bears games. And of course, he rooted for the right Chicago baseball team. He was a Sox fan. One day in July, Judy calls me and she says something's really wrong. Don is not moving very well. And, I knew that the swelling in Don's brain had taken over the motor center. It was also clear that Don was having like a long string of aphasic seizures. He was not really able to make words kind of on and off. So we needed to admit him to the hospital. The seizures were something I could help with, but I had this gut feeling. So I walked down from my office and across the campus and met Don and his wife in the ICU. And I told Don, standing at the foot of his bed, that I was really worried he was going to need a breathing tube. And I said, Don, we've talked about this before. This is a choice. But I'm really worried that if this breathing tube goes in, we won't hear your voice again. I think that your body won't be able to sustain you much longer. Now, Don couldn't talk, but he looked me dead in the eyes and he went like this, like he knew it was coming. And he didn't want something different. He had intubated hundreds of patients in his life as a paramedic. So Don was really hoping. He was really hoping that he had the slimmest of chances, that he would make it out of the ICU, he would go to rehab, and maybe he'd get back home again. Maybe he would sit on the couch and hold Judy's hand. The ICU team coded Don no less than 30 minutes later while Judy and I stood outside the ICU. We were watching the resuscitation effort. And there is a tremendous trauma and sadness that comes with that experience, but in this case, it was also a great comfort. This was exactly how Don wanted to die. Now, Bill's a very different guy. He's been my patient for more than 20 years. The first few times I met him, he was hospitalized for surgery and then seizures and then another surgery. I was an itty-bitty baby nurse before I was a nurse practitioner. From a neuro-oncologist perspective, this is actually kind of great. Bill's been around for 20 years with a bad tumor. And it means he's had a really long time to sit with this information. This knowledge is whittled to a very fine point for him. Now, today, I have a feeling that Bill is going to die in a few months. And Bill and I talked about this recently, and he said he's just got a few goals. He wants to record his voice for his kids. He wants them to hear the story of how he met their mom. They were in the dorm room, and his buddy was visiting and bouncing a baseball bat on the floor. She was in the dorm room underneath, and she came up to tell him to knock it off. He wants his kids to know that he loves them so dearly. He wants his wife to remember the sound of his voice. And he wants his buddies to come and visit him, sit on the porch and have a beer. I am a huge Noah Wyle fan, so of course I binged the HBO series The Bit. And Noah Wiley plays Dr. Michael Rabinovich, an emergency medicine physician. And in one episode, we find him helping the adult children of a dying man find some comfort and resolution with their grief. And he shares a Hawaiian prayer with them, the Ho'oponopono prayer. And it goes like this: I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. This is a prayer, but if we're really mindful, it's also a practice. It's an intention. It's a grasping reach for the resolution and reconciliation that we all need. And it's a plea for the legacy that we want. So what do I want you to know about my work? I want you to know that I am really, really okay with sitting with someone who is dying in the soonish future. It is the greatest gift to learn about my fellow humans. So today I live, and today I remember their stories. And I think about Don every time I see ambulance rig 42 drive past me. Thank you.